The first sound I heard after they said I was dead was champagne popping. Not a doctor calling my name. Not my husband crying. Not even silence. It was laughter, soft at first, then louder, confident, celebratory. I tried to open my eyes. Nothing. I tried to move my fingers. Nothing. I tried to scream. My body didn't listen, but my ears worked perfectly. She didn't make it, a nurse said quietly, somewhere near my feet. Massive blood loss. Another voice followed, older, sharper, a voice I knew too well. Well, my mother-in-law said, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for months. At least it's finally over. Someone laughed. A woman's. Young, familiar. Oh, come on, she said lightly. This was always going to happen. You don't marry into this family and last. That's when it hit me. They weren't grieving. They were relieved. A sheet brushed against my face. Cold fabric. The smell of disinfectant. I felt hands remove something from my finger. My wedding ring. My heart started racing, but my body stayed still. Then I heard my husband's voice. Calm, flat, almost bored. So the baby's fine, right? Not is my wife okay? Not can you save her? Not please. Just the baby. A doctor answered, yes, the baby survived. Good, my husband said. That's what matters. I wanted to disappear. Or wake up. Or die for real, just so I wouldn't have to hear anymore. But it didn't stop. They talked about paperwork, about timing, about who needed to be called and who didn't. Her parents are emotional, my mother-in-law said. No need to drag this out. The young woman, the one laughing earlier, spoke again. Do we really need a funeral? Seems unnecessary. There was a pause. Then my mother-in-law said, closed casket, quick cremation, done. I felt tears slide down my temples. I was still here. I could feel the cold, the weight of the sheet, the air moving across my skin. But to them, I was already gone. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take another word, another voice cut through the room. A doctor, nervous, hesitant. Wait, he said. Something's not right. Footsteps stopped. What do you mean? My husband asked. The doctor swallowed. I'm picking up another heartbeat. Silence crashed down. Another heartbeat. No, my mother-in-law snapped. That's impossible. The doctor checked again. His voice dropped to a whisper. It's twins. That was the moment everything changed. Because my death had been convenient. But two babies. That was a problem. And lying there, trapped inside my silent body, I realized something terrifying. They weren't done making plans. Not for me. For my children. My name is Elena Carter, and before everything went wrong, I thought I had a simple, ordinary life. I was 31 years old, married for 5 years, pregnant with my first child. I worked as a dental hygienist in a small clinic outside the city, the kind of place where patients remembered your name and asked about your weekend. I liked that life. I liked routine. I liked knowing what came next. Daniel, my husband, worked in logistics, long hours, endless phone calls. He was always tired, always distracted, but I told myself that's what ambition looked like. That's what being a good provider required. When people asked what he was like, I said, quiet, reliable, not very emotional but steady. I didn't realize how wrong I was. Daniel's mother, Lorraine, had always been part of the package. She lived close enough to drop by unannounced and treated our marriage like a temporary arrangement. She never raised her voice, never openly insulted me. She didn't need to. Her disapproval lived in sighs, tight smiles, and constant corrections. You load the dishwasher wrong. Daniel likes his shirts folded a certain way. You're very lucky he chose you. I swallowed it all. I thought patience was strength. When I got pregnant, I believed, truly believed, that everything would soften, that a baby would turn us into a family instead of a fragile arrangement held together by habits and silence. For a while, it almost worked. Daniel smiled when we told people. Lorraine suddenly became involved, too involved. She came to appointments I hadn't invited her to. She spoke about my baby as if she were managing a project. Still, I ignored the small discomforts. The way Daniel stopped touching my stomach. The way he took phone calls in the garage. The way his assistant, Maya, started texting him late at night about work. Pregnancy makes you tired. It makes you hopeful. It makes you want to believe. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself love didn't always look like movies. I told myself I was safe. The night my labor started, Daniel sighed instead of panicking. Tonight, he said, checking his phone. Are you sure? That question stayed with me, because as I sat in the hospital hours later, sweating, shaking, begging for relief, I realized something was already broken. I just didn't know how badly. And I wasn't ready for what the people closest to me were capable of. Once they believed I was gone. Before the hospital, before the machines and the lies, my world was small and ordinary. That's what makes what happened so hard to accept. There were no mansions, no secret wealth, just a modest two-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood where people waved when they walked their dogs. Our mornings were predictable. Daniel left early, always with coffee in a travel mug, always distracted. I packed my lunch, fed the stray cat that hung around our porch, and drove to work listening to the radio low because loud sounds made my head hurt during pregnancy. In the evenings, I cooked simple meals: pasta, soup, roasted vegetables. Daniel ate quickly, eyes on his phone. We talked about logistics more than feelings. Bills, schedules, who was picking up what. I told myself that was adulthood. Lorraine came over twice a week, sometimes more. She had opinions about everything: the couch cushions, the way I sat, the way I planned the nursery. "You don't need so many soft colors," she said once, standing in the half-painted room. "Babies need structure." I remember holding the paintbrush, my hand trembling, and saying nothing. Daniel didn't notice, or pretended not to. The nursery was the one place I felt hope. A small room at the back of the house, pale yellow walls, a white crib we built together one quiet Sunday afternoon. I folded tiny clothes and lined them up by size, imagining who my baby would become. I talked to her when I was alone, told her she was wanted, that she was safe. Those moments felt real. The rest of my life felt slightly off, like a picture hanging crooked on the wall. Daniel started staying late more often. He said work was intense. His assistant, Maya, came up in conversation more than before, always praised, always needed. I never met her, but I knew her voice from the way Daniel softened when he spoke to her on the phone. Lorraine noticed things too, or maybe she encouraged them. "Men stray when wives get distracted," she said once, glancing at my stomach. "You'll have to be careful." That sentence sat heavy in my chest. Still, I kept going. I went to prenatal appointments alone. I learned breathing techniques alone. I lay awake at night feeling the baby move, wondering why joy and dread felt so similar. The night my water broke, the house was quiet, too quiet. I stood in the kitchen gripping the counter as pain rolled through me, realizing this was it. The moment everything was supposed to change. Daniel looked irritated. Lorraine didn't answer her phone. As we drove to the hospital, streetlights flashing past, I remember thinking something simple and foolish. Once the baby is here, everything will make sense. I had no idea that was the last peaceful thought I'd have for a long time. I didn't understand time while I was trapped inside my body. Sometimes it felt like hours passed between voices. Other times, it felt like people spoke right through me, one conversation bleeding into the next. But slowly, painfully, patterns formed, and those patterns scared me. Daniel stopped calling me his wife. At first it was small. He referred to me as her when talking to doctors, then the patient. Once I heard him say, "She's not really there anymore. Not Alina. Not my wife. Just a thing." Lorraine took over everything. She spoke to nurses like she owned the place. She questioned medications, timing, protocols. She told staff who was allowed to visit and who was. "My parents," I heard a nurse ask once. Lorraine's answer was sharp. "They don't need to see this." I wanted to scream. My mother would have held my hand. My father would have talked to me like I could hear him, but they weren't allowed near me. They thought I was already buried. Then there was Maya. She started coming every day. At first she stood quietly in the corner. Then she sat in the chair beside my bed. Then she touched my baby when nurses brought her in for feeding, acting like it was the most natural thing in the world. "She looks just like Daniel," Maya said softly once. "Doesn't she?" No one corrected her. I noticed the way Daniel looked at her, not with guilt, with comfort, with familiarity, like someone who'd already chosen. Little things added up. Daniel removed my purse from the room. My phone disappeared. My clothes were replaced with hospital gowns only. I was being erased in pieces. The worst part was the way they spoke about the future, not if I recovered, when I would be let go. "There's no quality of life like this," Lorraine said one afternoon, not even lowering her voice. "Dragging it out is selfish." Selfish. I was breathing, my heart was beating, I was listening. But to them, I was already inconvenient. Then came the conversations about timelines. 30 days. That number came up more than once. "There are legal steps," Daniel said. "Insurance timelines," Lorraine replied. "Doctors won't fight it forever." They weren't waiting to see if I woke up. They were waiting for permission to stop trying. Something inside me shifted then, a quiet panic, a realization. This wasn't grief. This was preparation. And as I lay there, heart racing whenever their voices sharpened, I understood something with terrifying clarity. They weren't afraid I might wake up. They were counting on the fact that I wouldn't. And I didn't yet know how close they were to making sure of it. The first real crack in their plan came quietly. No shouting, no drama, just one sentence, spoken too close to my bed. A doctor came in late one evening. His voice was different from the others, careful, uncertain, like he was afraid of being overheard. "There's something in her chart that doesn't make sense," he said. Lorraine stiffened. I could hear it in her breathing. "What do you mean?" she asked. He hesitated. During the emergency, the focus was on stopping the bleeding, but when we reviewed the scans again, there were 2 fetal heartbeats. The room went completely silent. "Two, not one." I felt my chest tighten so hard it hurt. "That's impossible," Lorraine said sharply. "I was at every appointment." "The second baby was positioned higher," the doctor explained. "It's rare, but it happens." She was delivered shortly after the first and taken directly to the NICU. Daniel spoke then, and his voice gave him away. "You're saying there's another baby?" he asked. "Not my daughter. Not our child. Just another baby." "Yes," the doctor said. "She's stable. She's been in intensive care since delivery." I wanted to cry with relief. One of my babies was alive. Then the relief twisted into terror when I heard what came next. "Who else knows?" Lorraine asked. The doctor paused. "Only the NICU team and myself." Lorraine didn't thank him, didn't ask how the baby was doing. She just said, "We'll need privacy." After he left, the air changed. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Maya broke the silence. "This complicates things," she said softly. Daniel exhaled. "A lot." Lorraine's voice dropped low, controlled. "1 baby is manageable. 2 raises questions." "What kind of questions?" Daniel asked. "Questions we don't want," she snapped. "Why one was hidden, why we never told anyone, why the mother," she stopped herself, then corrected, "why she never mentioned twins." "She didn't know," Daniel muttered. "Doesn't matter," Lorraine replied. "Perception matters." I felt my heart rate spike. My body reacted even if I couldn't move. Maya asked the question that still haunts me. "So, what do we do with the second one?" No one answered right away. And in that silence, I realized something horrifying. They weren't discussing if they should keep my baby. They were discussing how to get rid of her. Lorraine finally spoke. "There are private options," she said calmly. "Quiet ones." My monitor started beeping faster. A nurse rushed in, adjusted something, frowned. "They thought it was medical." It was. It was instinct. It was a mother realizing that death wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Losing my voice was. And losing my child was something I couldn't allow, even if I had to fight from inside my own body. After they learned about the twins, the way they spoke around me changed. They lowered their voices. They waited until nurses left. They checked the hallway before talking. And I listened. Lorraine made phone calls from just outside my room. She never said names, but I understood enough. "Discreet," she said once. "No paperwork tied back to us." Another time, "Cash only, I don't want records." Daniel didn't argue. That was the part that hurt the most. He asked questions, not moral ones, practical ones. "How fast? What about medical clearance? Could this come back on us?" Maya stayed quiet during those conversations. But later, when it was just her and Daniel, her voice softened. "Think about it," she said. "1 baby is hard enough, 2 will ruin everything. This way we can start clean." Start clean. As if I were dirt. As if one of my daughters were a stain to be erased. Nurses began to notice things too. My heart rate spiked every time Lorraine spoke. Tears leaked from my eyes when Maya held my baby. My fingers twitched when Daniel said the word timing. One nurse, her name was Hannah, didn't ignore it. She leaned close while adjusting my IV and whispered, "If you can hear me, you're not alone." That sentence gave me more strength than anything else. Hannah started staying longer in my room. She asked doctors for neurological consults. She documented every abnormal response, every spike, every tear. Outside my room, she spoke to a supervisor. "I don't think she's unresponsive," Hannah said firmly. "I think she's trapped." Tests were ordered, reflex checks, brain scans. Lorraine didn't like it. "Why are we wasting resources?" she demanded. "She's not coming back." The neurologist didn't agree. "There's awareness here," he said carefully. "We can't ignore it." Meanwhile, social services were notified, not officially, not yet, but cautiously. Questions were asked about the babies, about custody, about family involvement. Lorraine started pushing back harder. "We have everything handled," she snapped. "There's no need to complicate this." But things were already complicated. Late one night, Daniel stood by my bed alone. I felt his presence before he spoke. "I didn't want it to be like this," he said quietly. For a moment, I almost believed him. Then he added, "But sometimes you have to make hard choices." I wanted to spit in his face. Instead, my finger twitched. Just once. His breath caught. "What was that?" he whispered. I tried again. This time, my finger moved. Daniel stepped back like he'd seen a ghost. And for the first time since my death, I felt something shift in my favor. Because suspicion was no longer just in my head. It was becoming visible. And they were starting to realize I might not be as gone as they hoped. I woke up just enough to hear the truth I was never meant to know. Not about the affair. Not about the babies. About me. It happened late at night, when the hallway was quiet and the lights were dimmed. Lorraine assumed no one was listening. She always did. "The insurance is confirmed," she said, her voice low but steady. "If life support is withdrawn after 30 days, the payout goes through without delay." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Insurance." Daniel sounded tense. "That's a lot of money, Mom." "It's compensation," she replied coldly, "for everything you've lost." Lost? As if I were an object. "How much?" Maya asked. 700,000, Lorraine said. "More if the house sells quickly." I felt dizzy, not from medication, from realization. This wasn't just about convenience. This wasn't about starting over. They had planned to profit from my deaths. Daniel hesitated. I heard it in his breathing. "And if she wakes up?" Lorraine laughed softly. "She won't." There was a pause. Then she added something that made my blood run cold. "And even if she did, who would believe her? A woman who's been in a coma, with brain damage." Maya said nothing. Daniel didn't argue. That silence told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't an accident. I was an obstacle. And obstacles were being removed. That's when the conversation shifted back to the twins. "One baby stays," Lorraine said. "Publicly, the other disappears quietly." "How?" Daniel asked. "I have a friend," she replied. "She's wanted a baby for years, no questions, cash, we call it a private arrangement." My monitor started beeping faster. The room felt like it was spinning. They were going to sell my child. Not abandon her. Not protect her. Sell her. "And the mother?" Maya asked softly. Lorraine's voice hardened. "There is no mother." Something inside me snapped. Every fear, every doubt, every moment I'd ignored before my labor, all of it lined up into one clear, horrifying truth. They hadn't just betrayed me after I collapsed. They had been waiting for me to. The late nights. The paperwork. The pressure to sign documents while pregnant and exhausted. This wasn't panic. This was a plan that finally had an opening. My body shook. A tear slid down my cheek. My heart rate screamed. Nurses rushed in, alarm sounding. Lorraine stepped back, annoyed. "She's agitated," she said dismissively. "It happens." But one nurse stared at my face. Really stared. "No," she said quietly. "This isn't random." And in that moment, as Lorraine turned away and Daniel avoided my eyes, I realized something terrifying and powerful at the same time. They thought I was powerless. They were wrong, because I had heard everything. And if I survived this, I would make sure the truth buried them instead. The night everything turned wasn't loud. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just one small movement. My finger. It twitched again while a nurse was checking my vitals. This time she didn't look away. She froze. "Alina," she whispered, "if you can hear me, do it again." I focused harder than I ever had in my life. My finger moved. That was enough. From that moment on, things started happening around me instead of to me. A neurologist was called in, then another. Tests were repeated. Words like awareness, locked in, preserved cognition started floating through the room. Lorraine hated those words. She argued, she complained, she demanded second opinions. But the hospital protocol had shifted. I was no longer gone. I was a patient with rights. Social services were brought in quietly, not announced, not discussed in front of Lorraine. Questions were asked about the babies, about guardianship, about why one infant had never been mentioned to family. At the same time, Hannah, the nurse who believed me, started documenting everything. Dates, names, statements overheard. Who said what, who stood where. Paper trails matter. On day 29, my eyes opened. Fully. I drew in a breath so sharp it burned. Elena, the doctor asked, stunned. I nodded. Babies, I croaked. Two. His face drained of color. They were going to sell one, I whispered, and let me die. Everything moved fast after that. Security was posted outside my room. Lorraine was barred from visiting. Daniel wasn't allowed near me without supervision. Police reports were filed. My parents were called. When my mother walked into my room and saw me sitting up, alive, she dropped to her knees. They told us you were cremated, she sobbed. We mourned you. I held her hand and told her everything. Then came the confrontation. Lorraine, Daniel, and Maya walked into my room later that day, confident, papers in hand, ready to end my life legally. They stopped dead when they saw me. Awake, watching. Surprised, I asked quietly. Daniel's face crumpled. Maya backed away. Lorraine tried to speak, but the words didn't come. I heard everything, I said. The insurance, the adoption, all of it. Police stepped in behind them. That was the revenge. Not screaming, not rage. A truth. Exposure. Consequences. They didn't lose because I fought. They lost because they thought I couldn't. And that mistake cost them everything. The days after were quiet, in a way I didn't recognize at first. No constant beeping. No whispered plotting outside my door. No feeling of being watched by people waiting for me to disappear. Just stillness. Doctors explained my condition carefully, how my brain had stayed awake while my body shut down, how rare it was, how close I'd come to being lost for good. I listened, but my attention was always somewhere else. On my daughters. They were placed in my arms together for the first time a week later, two tiny weights against my chest, two steady breaths, two lives that almost slipped through cracks created by people who claimed to love us. I named them myself. Lily for gentleness, Rose for resilience. Holding them felt unreal, like proof that I hadn't imagined everything, that the pain had meaning. The legal aftermath took months. I didn't attend every hearing. I couldn't. Some days, just standing felt like a victory. But I heard enough. Daniel lost custody permanently. Lorraine faced charges for fraud and conspiracy. Maya disappeared from public view, her name quietly removed from Daniel's life like a bad draft. I didn't celebrate any of it. Justice wasn't loud. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like relief. The house was sold, the money placed into trust for my girls. I moved back in with my parents for a while. I slept in my childhood room, listening to the familiar sounds of a safe house, doors closing softly, my mother humming in the kitchen. Sometimes at night, memories still came. Lorraine's voice, Daniel's silence, the word timing. I let them pass. Because here's what I learned. Evil doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles, plans, waits. And survival isn't dramatic. It's stubborn. It's breathing when someone decided you shouldn't. Now, when I watch Lily and Rose sleep side by side, I understand something I didn't before. They thought my story ended in that hospital room. They were wrong. It started there. I didn't come back angry. I came back awake. And that made all the difference. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you for listening to something that still feels heavy to say out loud. I share this story for one reason only, because silence is dangerous. Because sometimes the people who smile the most are the ones planning behind closed doors. And because trusting your instincts can save lives, even when your voice is taken away. If this story made you pause, comment below. If it made you angry, share it. If it made you hold someone a little tighter tonight, then it mattered. Subscribe if you want more real, human stories about betrayal, survival, and justice. The kind that don't rely on violence, only truth. And remember this. They thought I was gone, but I was listening the whole time.